NFL Week 16, Sweet 16. Ron, you owe everybody an apology for being late to discuss Week 15, 16, and a variety of other things.
Yeah, very late today, but happy to be here. Glad we're talking NFL and not college football because another quarterback is probably not playing today. A quarterback opted out yesterday. It's fruitless to really get a advanced edge on college football anymore because the opt-outs are now 4 times as large this year as last year. But let's talk NFL instead. That was a lot of fun last Sunday.
Uh, I don't think that was fun for everybody. It was. I give it mixed reviews personally. I should have done far better, uh, but I know some people didn't do well at all. So, how did you fare?
Well, I think we hinted on Tuesday and Friday that Detroit was a very powerful play. That was a Saturday play. Talked about Cleveland, talked about Buffalo. It was very, very strange for me to like three favorites, but that's the way the numbers crunched it out. Very, very, very strong situation, as you know, with Buffalo this past week against Dallas. We talked about, I think, on your other show with Fezzik, he talked about how everybody would have Dallas power rated higher. And I agree. As somebody who's done power ratings for 40 years, I had Dallas power rated higher, but the situation wasn't very good. I talked about how bad the Denver versus Detroit situation was, and I thought Cleveland would take care of business against Chicago. But I want to say something about that game. Want to see if you agree. After the game, which I think was a lucky win, um, I upgraded Chicago and downgraded Cleveland.
Yeah, I think you do have to downgrade Cleveland. I think the shine is wearing off of Flacco somewhat, and the injuries continue to mount. They even at home they were unimpressive. Uh, so lucky to win that game. You certainly, uh, amazingly enough, they can still win that division though. So it's just bizarre. Um, Chicago, I've been upgrading all along. We've talked about it ever since they picked up that Sweet guy. Uh, and they've gotten healthy. That defense has been formidable for the most part. I was surprised to see them give up their second basic 99 percentile to win game this season.
Yeah, still a verdict out on the coach. They had that game in hand. They could have won it. They were somewhat able to take advantage of Joe Flacco's 3 interceptions. That means 5 Joe Flacco interceptions in just 3 games. So there is a concern that Joe Flacco is a step slow in terms of recognizing what's available for him right now. Maybe he'll play his way into rhythm because there aren't many other options with Cleveland. But Cleveland looks pretty much guaranteed to get in the playoffs, maybe even with just one more win.
Yeah, it's even if Baltimore had won, or no, they did win, but it's just amazing that Cleveland just has this bizarre chance to tie them. And, obviously they need Baltimore to lose, but uh, they just won't go away and let my Baltimore win the damn division.
They'll take care of business with that one. Two things. I think the thing I was most proud of last week was resisting taking two situations that conflicted mightily with my power ratings. It's one of the reasons I do power ratings is to recognize when there's value and when there's not value. I think we talked about this on Friday as well. My numbers had Miami significantly more than the line against the Jets. I really wanted to take the Jets in that spot. But my numbers before Tyreek Hill was declared out was 12 and a half on the game for Miami. And the line was 9.5, pushing 10. And I thought about it. And then with Tyreek out, I don't know how much you give a wide receiver, even if I was really generous and I gave Tyreek Hill 2 points of value, it would still be 10.5 in Miami's favor. And by game time, that line was down to 7. So I did not take Miami, but I'm pleased that I didn't take the Jets. And I'm also pleased that I didn't take Washington. I thought the line should be 9.5 according to my power ratings. That number was mostly 6.5. And I would have taken it at 7.5, but I don't even know if it never hit a true 7 as far as I know.
Yeah, barely bounced into it a little bit at a few places.
I was babysitting that line a little bit, and I said, why am I babysitting this? It's Washington and so on. I don't have to get involved. Anything on your end, because I really was pleased at my discipline there. Was there anything on your end that you feel good about that you did or didn't do?
I really felt looking at the wrong date here, aren't I? Yeah, looking at the week before's. I was really pleased with the model and what it had to say on a handful of games. Cleveland was an extremely solid play. Whether it was a miracle win, but I stuck with them. I originally betted at -3, and then I elongated it by making sure I bet the 2.5, and then I teased back and forth to have it covered and have it basically, instead of laying 3 and 2.5 plus the middle. So everything worked out very well there. In Tampa Bay, I expected to be in that position. I didn't expect them to win by 2 touchdowns, but I thought that they could win the game by 3. Houston, I was really disappointed because I really thought they were going to win that game. And, Tennessee did blow it by being too conservative, but they did come back and win that game. And I was surprised New Orleans was able to, win by that margin, but I liked New Orleans. And I also liked the Jets with you, and I ended up playing Miami anyway. It just looked too easy. I just didn't think Miami could possibly fall that far, even with the missing center and Hill out. So I went with them anyway. And, Dallas, a big disappointment. It would have been nice to know that the team was sick before you bet them. And Baltimore did what I expected them to do. And that's about how I saw it.
Yeah, I had the money line parlay Cleveland to Detroit, so I needed that one pretty good. And I had some Cleveland 3, and then also some 2.5 when it dropped to 2.5. Originally, I thought the line was going to go to 3.5. That's why I put in a play on Cleveland at 3. And then I thought it would go to 3.5, and it ended up going to 2.5. So that was good. And then I ended up with Seattle last night when the line just crossed too many numbers for me to not take. I knew Drew Lock was playing, but Philly's not winning by margin. We've talked about that. It's Monday night. It's Seattle's season on the line. They're good enough to play close with any team. So the line got, I thought, as high as 5.5 and 6. I did not have that. I had 4.5. So I was comfortable before the last touchdown, but I couldn't believe that it kept going up. I didn't see the relevance of it going up because nothing really changed with Philly. We knew Hurts was probably not 100%. We knew Philadelphia had some flaws in terms of the way they were closing out games. All that changed was that Drew Lock was in and not Geno Smith. And had Geno Smith played, he would not have been at 100% anyway.
Yeah, it was fortunate because I started to find some off-priced alt lines. So I was loading up on Philadelphia plus points, and then the money line soared up when it went up to 4.5 or 5.5, 6. And I missed the top end, unfortunately, but I did get a great money line to use into those alternates. So I did end up middling. Even though Seattle won, but I was mainly on Philadelphia. It was a disappointing loss, and got to move on.
Yeah, no. The only other thing I would say is we had this talk a week ago about how my over-unders were different than the over-unders that Vegas was putting out, and then we live bet that game Minnesota-Cincinnati that we got that. So all in all, in terms of what's going on, I'm still not going to complain. But I will say, as we get into this week, my numbers are so tight. My initial read, and I only have, with the bowl season on, I don't have time to go deep dive. And part of it is having this conversation with you to get more indoctrinated into what I want to do for the week. But on first glance, most of my numbers came out so tight that I don't see a lot of plays right now.
For the overall card, I'm tighter than normal weeks, which is fine by me. I feel like I'll have a good grasp on the week.
Yeah. Yeah, let it percolate. There's some really intriguing games this week. I don't know if you like the schedule. I kind of like the schedule from a viewing standpoint.
Well, as you mentioned last night, the Lions actually have a shot at the number 2 seed again. If they win out, they get it.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they can win out, but if they do win out, they're the 2 seed, and that would make the world of difference for them to be able to get potentially 2 home games in the playoffs, because they don't travel as well as we know.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to be in that dome. It's nice to be in the situation where they haven't been in a situation where they've not only not been in the playoffs, but when they've been in, they haven't been winning in the playoffs. So if you're going to try to string 3 in a row in the playoffs, you want some of them to be at home.
Yep. Is Heineke worth 3.5 points more than Ritter?
What's the current? This is a good topic to start out with. So thanks, Russell. Heineke has a different skill set, and he has been announced as a starter. I believe that is true.
Yeah.
We're seeing a line. What are we seeing? Yeah, we saw Atlanta flip to a favorite, huh?
Yeah, I had a couple of services released it.
Okay. Yeah. The main thing about this game is I think there's higher over-under variance. So
I thought the total was low here.
Yeah, I didn't make a total on the game because there was no point for me to make a total because I needed to know who was going to be the quarterback.
Well, I think Indianapolis has gone over 9 of their games.
Yeah, I think Heineke brings more of a passing dynamic to them. And because of that, this is one of the things. What are we looking at? 44?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to start early on a live bet on Atlanta. Over 44. Now let's get it out of the way right now.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. My play is in. Okay, I've satisfied all the people who have asked for live betting. There you go. I do not have a current opinion on the spread just because Heineke is in though.
I think it's going to keep climbing just a little bit.
Obviously, it's a very important game for Atlanta because one more loss and they're done.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to middle that 8.5, 9 if they don't win, right?
Yeah, that number was too high. And I know there are people that you know and I know that recommended Atlanta over, but they just don't have the. I would honestly make a coaching change because they don't get it in today's NFL. You're asking Ritter to throw like 17 passes, and when he's passing on obvious passing downs.
I don't know what the hell's wrong with that team, but it's underperforming ridiculously. It's just amazing that they're going to struggle to get over 500 with that schedule. We were worried that there'd be multiple teams with 11 wins in that division because of that schedule.
Yeah, it's kind of like fake information. Like when Minnesota and the New York Giants made the playoffs last year, it was largely schedule related. So I agree. We thought some of these teams would make it just because they had such an easy schedule. But every game with Atlanta, I know people have mentioned it, every game's been a teaser game with Atlanta because they can't score. The points are low. Now Indy brings a different dynamic because they're a higher scoring team than Atlanta's used to facing. So I don't know about the tease possibilities there. And Fuster brings up a point about the run game without Moss. It just goes to show you that a lot of running backs in the league are interchangeable.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about that. I was just flabbergasted how Pittsburgh's offense sucks, but nevertheless they had been showing signs of life, and they just shut them down. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about looking anemic, that was a big surprise, and they just seem to play with a real unexpected confidence about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you get to watch much of that game?
Didn't watch much of that game at all. I will say that Indy's an interesting team because the expectations weren't that high, but the schedule was the easiest in the NFL. And unlike Atlanta, they took advantage of it. And there is a good sense of confidence with that organization right now. They can win with Minshew. They hope they can win with the rookie quarterback, Richardson, when he comes back. I said something in an article for Wager Talk that should be out. If it's not out, it'll be out today. Teams need to rethink as to who their second quarterback is, because that position more than ever is so vital. And to have both Minshew and Richardson on the roster is a good thing.
Well, you think he's not going to be back next year?
You don't think Minshew would? Because he's looking for a starting job?
I would think he can get a starting job, possibly.
Yeah. I mean, I would. It's a tough situation because you could get Geno Smith money maybe by going somewhere else, because if you get Indy to the playoffs, you're valuable. But the comfort level of staying with the team you're on now might be worth a couple of $1 million if the pricing is right.
Well, I'd rather be in a better situation than making. I think more players should do that, and when they do, they seem to be happier about it.
Yeah. If the choice is, if he's offered $20 million a year for 3 years, and in Indianapolis he's offered $12 million for 1 year, there's no choice. Of course he's going to go somewhere else. So you have to make the most of what you can. But if things are close, this would be a good situation, because Richardson, I know we're only talking about a 1-year NFL sample size, but his style is such that you need a competent backup quarterback, because his style is such is that he's going to be hit a lot.
How surprised are you at how well the Colts are playing? I mean, every week I hear non-believers, but I show that they're clearly that good.
Yeah, I have Indy. Their power rating is not a playoff power rating. It's a function of the schedule they've played. But as I've said all season long, this is one of the teams that I've generally stayed away from, because I have not felt like I have a pulse on them. I'm going to look back and see what I've done most recently in terms of course, my notes are all over the place, but I wanted to see how many plays I've actually had on them recently.
Well, I think the issue with the Colts is that it seems like every week they're never getting enough points, or they're giving a little or getting a lot, and those are difficult games to bet.
Yeah, I have not bet an indie game in a long time. So I think it's my policy that if I'm uncomfortable with them, I'm going to go in another direction. And the chances are, other than what I just did with the over-under, I won't have action in this game unless this game goes crazy. Because if for whatever reason Atlanta trends all the way up to 3, then there's no problem. I'm taking Indy plus 3.
I just don't think Atlanta's any good. I think they're pretty bad.
Yeah, there's not a lot of confidence in the room. The owner is getting a little more hands-on right now, and I I do think we'll see a coaching change.
What do you see on this Rams Saints game? Is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I have conflicting information in this. I mean, in general, I'd rather look the dog in this kind of game. It's a short week game, so we have to worry about that again. As we know, I'm not a big Dennis Allen fan. They are tied for the lead with Tampa in the division. That's very interesting situation right now. New Orleans has had a couple of solid games. Um, I I don't have the stuff in front of me, but I think that means there could be regression this week. Let me see if I can pull something up real quick.
Four teams, 7-7 in the
No.
NFC.
No situation there. Yeah. Anybody can run the table they're in if they can get to 10. You might need 10 in the AFC, but I think you can get in at 9, one or two teams, 9 in the NFC.
Are you a believer in these Rams? Or you think they're kind of skating by, or how do you look at it?
I had them highly power rated compared to where I had them at the beginning of the season. I have them as with a legit playoff power rating. So I don't know if it's smoke and mirrors, because the average person who follows football knows who Aaron Donald is on defense, probably cannot name anybody else who plays defense for the Rams. And they're allowing 60% completions. The run defense is pretty much on par. They're not, even with Aaron Donald, the days of the 50 sacks that they've had, that's not happening right now. They're kind of middle of the pack in terms of sacks, maybe slightly lower middle of the pack in terms of sacks. And defensively, overall, they're probably roughly middle over of the pack in terms of points allowed. But they're quietly getting things done, and they're not being blown out right now, unless you're talking about playing San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm just. I think Olave should be back finally this week. That's kind of hurt him a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
but
it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma whether you play Olave, even though he didn't play last week. If you don't play him this week, or maybe you play him because you got 10 days till your next game.
Well, this is going to map out as Stafford goes back home to Detroit in the playoffs if things remain where they are. That's a mighty interesting storyline there.
Yeah, I think the Rams are better than the Saints, but I have no inclination to lay 4 points in this kind of game.
What about Cincinnati without Chase? They're definitely looking better than I thought that they would.
Yeah, they another game. This is a problem I have this week. I have conflicting situations. I have a very strong situation for Cincy and a very strong situation for Pittsburgh. So it's kind of, okay, now what? I kind of like the Cincinnati situation more, but I don't feel comfortable laying them as a road favorite, because Cincinnati's defense, you've talked about this, Cincinnati's defense still has holes in it.
Yeah, but the Pittsburgh offense has holes in it.
I think there's going to be an off-season philosophical change with how Pittsburgh does business, but right now it may be too late to right the ship.
You know what? This is just the type of game that Pittsburgh comes and wins just when you leave them for dead. I mean, I don't understand how poorly Pittsburgh played last week. It's just astounding. I don't know. It leaves me speechless.
Yeah. It's not the way Mike Tomlin mapped it out. They couldn't even hold leads, but it's a validation that Mitchell Trubisky is another one who doesn't move the chain. Now we go to Mason Rudolph, who's the quarterback for this particular game. They've seen Mason Rudolph has been in the system for several years now, and they didn't feel inclined to use him. And I think the fact that they didn't feel inclined to use him means that it's almost like a last resort. I know he was rushed into the game, and I did see some of what he brought to the table in some highlights. And he was missing throws, maybe probably because he wasn't sharp, but also because he wasn't anticipating. And I don't think he's an anticipatory type of quarterback. And I think that's a problem against Cincinnati, because Cincinnati's one strength is that they bait opposing quarterbacks.
Right. And I think he's sucker prone. He didn't look good, but he'll get all first team reps the whole week. So maybe that'll make a difference.
I think Pittsburgh is going to rely on its run game in this situation and hope their defense steps up and finds something out about Browning that they can hang their hats on. And back to what you said about if Chase is out of the game, which he's most likely is, it's a Saturday game. That's one big weapon that they don't have to deal with. And the rest of the weapons are not as fast and as breaking through the seam as the other. Tyler Boyd is a possession wide receiver in the middle. Higgins is really good, but not 100%. They like Chase Brown. They're putting him into the offense more and into the passing game because Mixon, you know what you get from Mixon. But it makes Pittsburgh's job easier to defend. So I think this is one of those games where Pittsburgh tries to shorten it.
Well, that makes sense. The Packers may not make it over their win total after all. It's amazing how far they've fallen in just a few weeks. But we brought that up, that they kind of reminded us of Denver, where they got all hot and then they fold like a paper napkin. And Green Bay is just following Denver's lead and doing the same thing. Where do you think the team stands? I mean, I think they're pretty much dead.
Yeah, they're in a lot of trouble division-wise, record-wise, and so on. They're pretty much dead. I think I saw a stat that they have like a 5% chance to make the playoffs. The problem with Green Bay is they're not willing to part ways with Joe Barry. There's a lot of diehard Green Bay fans that can't wait for Joe Barry to be given a pink slip. But maybe it's a kiss of death, but he got a vote of confidence this past weekend from his coach. So do you really want to keep with Joe Barry, whose December performances have been pretty bad?
I'm more of a Fred Barry guy from what's happening, but
yeah. Well, I would pick Rick Barry over because Rick Barry at least could outscore the other team. And we know Jordan Love's been up and down and so on. So we've got a little problem. I saw that tweet about Cincy's run D's been dramatically worse. That's true. And the pass D has held its own, but they missed Jesse Bates a little bit there too, since he's not the same defense. But back to Green Bay. I mean, you're going to be on a roller coaster with the offense and with the defense the way they're going.
I think it wouldn't surprise me to see Carolina do well in this game. Normally you'd see a team in this spot kind of come down a little bit from a rare win, but sometimes you see these teams out of nowhere just like win the last 2, 3, 4 games of the season that weren't expected to. They certainly have every motivation in the world to just out of spite make sure they don't give the Bears the number 1 pick. So
yeah, you're right. We see it every year. A couple of these very low level teams win a couple of games that you don't think they're going to. It's more of a function of their opponent than them. The fact that Carolina put up 3 field goals against Atlanta and they all come out feeling great and Bryce Young is happy. We did it. You guys didn't do nothing. You got 3 field goals. It's still not a good team.
Boy, this is awfully interesting, this Cleveland-Houston. I think Stroud's going to play, but I haven't even seen that he's a likely go. But if he doesn't pass concussion protocol by tomorrow, you got to really worry something's up because it's been well over a week now.
Yeah, he doesn't have the big time name to get the expedited concussion protocol approval that some of these other guys have had. It's interesting because Houston really needs this game. Most likely it's going to come down to their final game against Indianapolis anyway. But this is one they may need because there's a lot of teams in the same position. Buffalo is starting to get hot. Indianapolis already has a game up on them in the standings. Jacksonville's right there in terms of maybe they got the easier part of their schedule right now. So Houston, I know they control their own destiny because they play Indy, but this is an important game for them.
Well, I think Houston shows character every single week. It's one of the teams I've been very fortunate that the model says every week to play them. So it's nice to be able to have one of those teams because most people have been kind of skeptical about them week to week, thinking that it's going to just stop. And you can only lose once riding with a streak, but trying to figure out when it ends, it could be difficult.
That's a good point. What Houston does is they make teams one-dimensional. Taking on the persona of D'Amico Rhymes, their head coach, they don't let you get running yards. Cleveland would prefer to establish the run, but they've been, obviously without Nick Chubb, they don't have a vital part of their run attack because Nick Chubb was one of the leaders in terms of rushing yards. But this is a game where Joe Flacco, again, is going to be throwing 35, 40 passes in order to win this game. And if Houston gets to Joe Flacco, then Houston's going to win this game. If Houston doesn't get to Joe Flacco, then the onus is on their offense to do something against Cleveland. And we know Cleveland's road splits aren't that good. So it makes for an interesting game.
What's the over-under on his interceptions going to be?
For Flacco?
Yeah.
Well, I would probably set it at minus 200 that he throws an interception.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If he's going to, even if he plays really well, you throw the ball 40 times, there's going to be a slip up.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I think, he's going to be throwing a lot. He's going to have to throw the ball a lot. And one of the reasons why he's probably going to throw a lot is because Cleveland is not going to be consistent either in moving the chains. When teams like Houston make the other team one-dimensional, that means you're going to have more passes, more clock stoppages, more punts, that kind of thing. That's why in terms of prop betting, you look for teams that are one-dimensional and try to take advantage of it. So the idea is that in this particular game, Joe Flacco will have to throw a lot of passes.
Yeah, it's a little early for props. There's none.
Yeah. So it gets early and then it gets late because everything's adjusted now by Saturday.
I think it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, that Houston does need it. They have to have it.
Yeah.
It'd be a shame if they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Seattle, Tennessee. Seattle can't afford a flat spot here, but now they're favored to make the playoffs again.
Yeah, that was an important win. You and I have both seen how competitive they are each week. They're still young. They played a really tough stretch of games, and they needed to come out with one of them being a victory, and that's what they did against Philadelphia on Monday night. That was their season right there, and now they have to keep the pace up because they lose tiebreakers against the Rams. We know that because the Rams beat them twice. So they're going to have to win, obviously, at least two of these games, and this one's really, really important, and it's another toss-up game.
And the Rams have to finish against San Francisco. The Rams have no room for error.
Yeah. An interesting side note on that, which I think we should bring up to people listening and to ourselves is that San Francisco may sit players that week. So you have to factor that in. There are two ways you factor that in. Number one, when you're betting now and you're saying, well, maybe Seattle gets a break or the Rams get a break that week 18 because San Francisco's resting. And the other thing is you have to be aware of that. So as soon as the line opens on Sunday afternoon or whenever it opens at faraway places, you have to jump on it if you have a conviction that San Francisco is going to rest people.
Well, here's the issue, though. If you sit them, then they go 2 full weeks without playing. I mean, you're basically playing in the third week. So wouldn't there be a concern for that, getting a little rusty out of game shape?
Yeah, and the way I would attack that and the way I've always been fascinated with the final weeks is that I would bet third and fourth quarter plays against the 49ers because I think they play half the game. And that's a strategy that has worked so well.
This Tennessee's awfully pesty. I think they'll make things difficult on Seattle. That'll be an interesting game, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
The Jets, they have a shot. I have it right where it's supposed to be, surprising enough.
Me too, unfortunately.
I don't have much to say about it. I'm glad my number comes right on their number, so I don't have to think about it.
I talked about how I have good situations for Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. I have a tremendously bad situation for Washington, negated by a tremendously bad situation by the Jets. They're both in situations that I would like to fade them. So I have to ignore the game, and I'm proud of ignoring the game at the present time. If it goes to 3.5, I might take a second look, but I really don't want to.
Just pretend you don't see that 3.5. Right?
Yeah. Oh, I missed it. Too bad. Because Washington, it's almost like the coach. It's a foregone conclusion that he's gone, and there's going to be sweeping changes. We knew that at the trade deadline. I, for one, I think I didn't take advantage enough about fading Washington right after the trade deadline. I think I got one play in against them, and it probably should have been a little bit more because they quit right at the trading deadline. No, they won the game after that, didn't they? Yeah, they may have. I don't have. I'm trying to see where I am on this one. They won a game. They lost the last 3. They looked terrible against the New York Giants. They got blown out on Thanksgiving. They got blown out against Miami. They come back with rest and a good situation, and they get behind 2 touchdowns to the Rams. They've lost and not covered the last 4.
And they don't like 2-point conversions for some reason.
Yeah, that was strategically probably the end of the line for anything analytical for Ron Rivera.
Detroit, Minnesota.
Now you're talking the meat of the schedule as we move on.
This is the first time all season that the model has not leaned Detroit. And it comes to fractionally under 3. Like 2.5, strong 2.5 range. So that's with as well as Detroit played last week. I would have thought that their numbers might have jumped enough to distort them again. But surprisingly, this number's good.
Yeah, there was a comment in the chat earlier about our futures that we made with Minnesota making the playoffs, and it's still live, but it's not a certainty by any means. We've got, if you count Dallas and Philadelphia are in the playoffs, I think already. So there's 2 spots left for what, 4 teams if you discount Green Bay. We've got the Rams available. We've got Seattle available. We've got Minnesota available. Only
And the
only 2,
Saints.
and the Saints and Tampa, I guess, because one of them would win the division and one not. So you got 4 teams, 2 spots available, and Minnesota is going to have to play Detroit twice. And so maybe somebody can help me out what their third game is.
Minnesota's third game is Green Bay. Green Bay sandwich.
Okay, at home?
In Minnesota.
Okay. But still, the chances are they're not going to sweep the board, not playing Detroit twice, not playing these 3 divisional games. But 2-1 in the division, maybe that helps them. Obviously, they're going to have to go 2-1. So this is no sure thing with the plus money. But very important game. And I have, historically, Minnesota has won at home against Detroit. Historically, Minnesota has not covered against Detroit. So we're seeing them in a rare home underdog situation against the Lions, dome versus dome. So I think it cancels each other out and makes this a very difficult game to handicap. I don't know what you think.
I just think that I just noticed something. Minnesota has played 2 extra road games.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's 8 teams in the league that have played 2 extra home games already, and there are 8 teams that have played 2 extra road games.
Yeah, remember the AFC plays 9 and the NFC plays 8, so you're going to have skewed numbers.
I just think it's an interesting consideration because the teams with those 2 extra homes or 2 extra roads, you kind of have to factor that into a model in your ratings a little bit because
I understand we've had the conversation. You've said that very nicely about college. I don't know about the NFL except for in September after 3 or 4 games in that route. I don't know. There's a nice question in the chat about the rating between Cousins and Mullins. I think it's 3 points. That sounds high, 2.5, 3 points. But I think Cousins will throw far fewer interceptions compared to Mullins.
Mullins looked atrocious. I had Minnesota, and I think my lucky stars.
I think, like we talked about last week, Mullins brings variance to the over-under, creating situations where more points are going to be scored, but that could be for either team. So I would say 2.5 points right now would be. So I would say that the line would be roughly pick 'em if Kirk Cousins was playing in this game.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I don't think the market. I think the market would be all over Detroit at anything less than 1.5. But
yeah, and if Cousins was playing, given the fact that that would change the turnover dynamic, I would at Pick'em with Cousins, I would probably, if not a strong lean, have a play on Minnesota.
Well, we shall see. I would think that they end up splitting some way, somehow.
Makes sense. I don't think there's. They know each other well.
Detroit gets Gardner Webb back. They get somebody else back. Ragnow played a great game, and he was a week out of meniscus surgery. So that was interesting. And then here's the big news of the day, which I think might mean something week 18 potentially. They activated Hendon Hooker. So maybe they want to see how this guy, give him some experience if they get a chance.
Yeah. Can't read into that too much. Detroit needs to take care of business. We'll see what happens.
Freddie Bridgewater announced his retirement after the season, so I guess he has made uh, amazing friendships and alliances in that locker room. The players just say that this guy has helped them out immensely with just being a mentor type guy. He's really enjoyed it. He's going to go coach high school football, so you can he's that type of guy. So I think he's been a good influence on that locker room.
He was one of my absolute favorite players to cover coming in and out of college. He is exactly that, a tremendous locker room presence, from all indications, one of the absolute nicest guys that there is. And he's done enough. He's made enough. He wants to move on with his life. That's fine.
Well, I would imagine, they tested Lawrence for a concussion.
Yeah.
He seemed to play like he had a concussion most of the game. I mean, when did they say he got it? I know they said it was the last play, but it seemed like he got it at the beginning.
Nah, he got hit harder earlier, and I remain steadfastly concerned about the fact that he should not have played the week after he was really, really hurt. That was about 3 weeks ago. They needed to sit him. He has probably overcompensated somewhere in his throwing motion, in his reads, in trying to get out of the pocket a little faster. I applaud him for putting the team first, but maybe he should have sat just 1 week to get his body right, because on paper, Jacksonville and Tampa are dead even teams, in my opinion. But the body language and the confidence that Baker Mayfield has right now compared to Trevor Lawrence is night and day different.
Yeah, I want to talk about Baker in a bit.
Okay. Talk about him now.
I want to talk about him later, Ron.
Okay.
I got Jacksonville a little bit better, which was kind of surprising because I'm not really that high on Jacksonville. And Tampa Bay's on a roll. And we brought that up when Atlanta was leading the division a little bit, that Baker was playing better. And I mean, if the coach doesn't completely screw things up, they've got hope.
Yeah, Tampa has been really I think it's a surprising team from where I previewed them in August, but not so surprising after the first month when I just basically said I was wrong about Tampa, that their veterans stepped up. They had enough leaders in the locker room. We know what Baker Mayfield brings to the table. So I'm not surprised anymore that Tampa's in this position. It's not that they're a fantastic team. I have them. I'm trying to look where my New Orleans power rating is. I have New Orleans still power rated higher than Tampa.
Well, I think, boy, I think this has got to be leaning that Trevor's expected in a little bit. It's not going to make some huge jump, wouldn't you think?
I think they play him. I think more than that, Travis Etienne has to get uncorked. And this was a guy who as a rookie and as a second-year guy, ran for a high yards per carry. He's nowhere near those figures now. This guy's running 3.5 per carry or something like that. And this is a noticeable drop in performance that hasn't been talked about enough. Is it the offensive line that's causing that for Jacksonville? Because there's no real indication that they're a terrible offensive line. I would rate them a C-, not one of the bottom 8 or 9 teams offensive line wise. They've had some injuries. I understand that, but his drop off has caused a problem in terms of them being able to achieve run pass balance.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, they're a shell of what they were last year. So they're just skating by. I agree with that. He probably came back too early from injury and should have sat out another game. There's probably lasting effects because some of his decision making was, questionable.
So let me ask you this question about Tampa. So we all probably agree that there's forward momentum for Tampa because they're playing well, their confidence level is high, and so on. And Jacksonville, something's wrong. We all agree with that, or I'm putting words in your mouth that you agree with that. Yet the line is pretty much pick 'em, telling us, maybe sending a story that Jacksonville should win this game. Is there anything to that, or is there any reason to read into that line?
Well, as Mr. Cluck says, the look ahead was Jacksonville -3. But
Okay.
Jacksonville gets a downgrade and Tampa Bay gets a little upgrade. So, you know, I think it's mostly factored in because I think this line would have come out at 2 at the highest anyway. If
Yeah.
Trevor was known to be in, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I would make the line pick 'em. I made a Tampa 1 just because of the recent momentum, and that's where I thought the line would lie. So I was a little surprised they weren't immediately made the favorite, even though I would have made it pick 'em. And like Russell says in the chat, this race is wide open. And this is an important game for Jacksonville. They had a nice lead before the schedule got a little tougher and before Trevor Lawrence started having injury concerns in that wild Monday night or Sunday night game where they lost by a point or something like that. And it's been downhill. And there's no guarantee Jacksonville makes the playoffs if they don't start performing better.
Well, I put a comment out and I tweeted it out or posted it or whatever. You know, well, we are. At least I know I'm guilty of it. I think everybody's guilty of saying, "Well, I expect maximum effort." They've got a lot to play for. Blah blah blah. If you don't feel that the team is professional enough to, if you don't have those expectations of that team for every game, why would you back it in the first? Back them at all?
Yeah. Yeah. And the effort's going to be there from both of these teams. I have no problem with that.
I scrolled here. Dallas, Miami. Now, here's an interesting situation. I think the pain point here is betting Dallas, but Miami hasn't beaten anybody, that's good. So they've got their own fleas. What are your thoughts on this game? It would have been nice to have known that the team wasn't sick. I think I said that. Frustrating with Dallas, but they should be in good shape by now.
Someone is at front door.
Yeah. I think that you're catching Dallas at a good spot. They came off the Philadelphia game. Then they go into that situation that was not good, in my opinion, Buffalo. And Dallas was still higher power rating. I still have Dallas a little bit higher power rated than Miami overall. Not by much, but just a little bit.
Yeah, 1 point.
Yeah. So I don't have any problem with where the lines are and so on. Miami is out to prove a point in this game. We've talked about how Dallas hasn't really beaten any, Dallas has clobbered teams that are well below their pay grade. I mean, clobbered them. But Miami's the same way. They just beat the Jets 30-0. Okay.
It wasn't that close.
Did we think the Jets were going to win the game? No. I did think that they would be competitive.
I actually thought they had a remote shot. I mean, with them missing their center and Hill and they look so bad.
Yeah, and they're just beating up on bullies. So both these teams have something to prove against each other, which makes it a fascinating game. I went in August and now saying, you give me 3 points on either team and I'm taking it. Well, I'm not going to get 3 points on either team. I mean, it would be foolish to make this line 3 on either team. So I don't have a conviction in this game, but because the stat sheet doesn't help me, but my gut kind of tells me that Miami's going to win this game, but I don't have anything to want to force a play about that.
It looks awfully easy. They're not asking much.
Yeah. Okay, so it says Miami will be on third consecutive home game. How much does that work into it? There is a situation that works occasionally in that manner, depending on who you play and how you performed the previous two. I would have to look it up to see how it applies in this game.
It's been 3 straight home games. Jeez.
Yeah, I didn't realize that because I don't have that part of my analysis done so far. I'm trusting that it's their third home game, so I'm not. I don't really have anything offhand that says that that's a plus or a minus.
Well, I expect a very good game. It feels a lot like last week where one of the teams can take off. I'd just be shocked if Dallas, does another no-show. That'll be critically concerning. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I have a feeling that Miami's one of those teams. We saw it with Kansas City. We always see it with Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, but we see it with Miami as well. They can get quite innovative in terms of their offensive scheme. So they're not going to give you that vanilla set that teams like Dallas would like to see. They're going to do some interesting things. And Dallas relies on a lot of speed on defense. And Miami, we know, is probably the fastest team in the NFL, Miami or Kansas City. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, interesting formations that Miami throws at Dallas in this game. So I think this game is about Dak Prescott against Jalen Ramsey and Howard, Xavier Howard. There are games that we've seen Dak Prescott disappear, and there are games that we've seen Dak Prescott throw for 350 yards. So I don't have the crystal ball as to which it is, but I think Dak's going to have a good game in this one.
Did you watch? I missed a lot of that game, but every time I looked in, it was just atrocious. But they had some unusual things go against them. Was a couple of calls and
Dallas Buffalo. You're talking about
Dallas.
Yeah. It just seemed to me. I watched the beginning and then I wanted to take a break. It seemed to me that Buffalo was going to win from the start. And what Buffalo did is something that I've asked them to do all season long: rely on the run game, keep Josh Allen out of harm's way. Josh Allen completed 7 passes and they won by 28 points or whatever they won by.
Yeah, he didn't break 100 yards.
Yeah, they won 31-10 and he completed 7 passes. And everybody was all smiles because that game plan was perfect. Cleveland's favorite topic.
This is just hilarious.
We'll talk about San Francisco when we get to that game. So hang in there.
I'm trying to make a bet, and it tells me, whatever my limit was, I put it in, and they had my limit 20% lower. So then I put that in, and then I go to confirm, and now it's half of what the corrected one was. And I'm like, don't know whether to be stubborn and not give him the play or what. It's just so annoying.
Yeah.
Arizona, Chicago. That seems like it'll be. Doesn't that have a wild feel to it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for these teams to hold back. If I'm the Chicago coaching staff, I want to see everything I can. I'm still evaluating Justin Fields. I'm still evaluating the offensive scheme. I'm evaluating a lot of things with this team. I don't want to come away thinking we should have done this or we should have done that. And the same thing with Arizona. They might as well try everything they can. They played well against San Francisco in the first half. We talked about this last week. Arizona is a pretty good first half team going against another pretty good first half team in San Francisco. They just don't have the overall personnel to compete. Sneaky under in the Bears game, says Professor Cris. This is a temperature check game.
I think Chicago will come to play. I think both teams will come to play, and I think it'll be fast and loose.
My lean would be with Chicago if the weather is bad.
Uh, yeah, I have to definitely lean that way. Yeah, let's see here. Oh, everybody just doesn't want my action today. New England and Denver. That seems like a lot of points for Denver.
Yeah, my number's pretty close to that. Actually, it's exactly on that. It's a Sunday night football game. Not exactly going to be the most glorious Sunday night football game we've ever seen. So have fun. I have not much to say about that game. I'm trying to see what my note is. Yeah, I know. At some point, it seems like New England is going through the motions.
But with that defense, they should accidentally stay within 6, possibly.
Yeah, I'm not. I think they're going to. You're going to come away from that game thinking, boy, New England should have covered. That's the problem.
Yeah, I would think so. So I'm not saying, my model definitely leans Denver's way, and I can't get away from them. 3 Monday night games or 3 Monday games.
3 Monday games. Here we go again. This is the 5th in a row. Kansas City with a rest differential disadvantage.
I think those 3 teams make a great teaser trio.
Taking Kansas City to win the game.
Yeah, basically Philadelphia the same, and I would lean the Baltimore direction, but it's still going up. Circus sitting there at a 6, and it's been there for an hour.
Yeah, what do you see on Kansas City? Is that a solid 10? 9.5, 10.
Yeah, it's a weak 10. I don't see any 9.5s anywhere, but
okay,
it's borderline.
Yeah, I think Vegas hangs in this game.
Oh gosh, they moved the market. Yeah, I don't think Kansas City can lose that game. I don't think Philadelphia is going to lose that game. What were your numbers? Where were you leaning on this San Francisco Baltimore? I've got to imagine that's too many points for you.
Well, San Francisco has an unbelievable track record on Monday night football games. The standalone games, the extra day, the whole dynamic of their offense. It's a fascinating game. This is a statement game for Lamar Jackson. If we're really going to be talking about the MVP race, if Purdy or McCaffrey or Jackson really stands out as compared to the other two, they become the favorite. I mean, this is a game that I assume people are going to watch because it's Christmas night. Maybe all the festivities will have been done with, especially on the East Coast. So I think it's a fascinating game from an MVP standpoint. I think it's a fascinating game for what will Lamar Jackson bring to the table against that San Francisco front four.
I'm very curious about that. How do you think he will fare?
I think he won't be able to run the ball effectively in this game. But he is going to probably have a couple of situations where the pocket breaks down, he eludes a tackler. I could see him throwing 1 or 2 passes complete for 30 plus yards, where he just breaks the back of San Francisco on 3rd and 9. He completes a 36-yard pass. And the same thing the other way around, because we know Baltimore is a gambling defense and Baltimore has trouble protecting leads if they get a lead in this game. I think you're going to see some long gainers in this particular affair. I think you're going to see some situations where the field is going to be stretched.
How concerned are you about them losing yet another running back?
I'm very concerned because that Mitchell, another East Carolina product. There are a lot of East Carolina running backs that have graced the NFL with high yards per carry, and they've all fared well in short periods of time. And Mitchell was showing an elusive burst that their current running backs do not have. Edwards, Justice Hill, they just don't have that. Right at the time he was peaking, they lose him. It's a very unfortunate, and hopefully Baltimore does not go into one of these injury cycles again.
Do you know when Andrews is supposed to be back?
I think at best in the playoffs.
The comedy. Well, now that we're through these teams, we can segue because I've been talking about MVP, and I do have a Jackson ticket, and a lot of people feel if they run the table that he's the one to beat if he can plow through San Francisco, and they have Miami and Pittsburgh afterwards. So that'd be an impressive resume.
I have 4 people in the race. I think I tweeted it out: Purdy, McCaffrey, Tua, and Jackson. Maybe I'm missing somebody. I certainly don't have Josh Allen in the race. Fine that Josh Allen makes spectacular plays, but he's also put them in a situation where they're fighting for playoffs. He is nowhere near my MVP top 4. No offense to him or people who like Josh Allen, but those are my 4.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think if they run the table and somehow win that division, I think he'll become part of the conversation. But I agree with you that too little, too late.
Yeah. I mean, 2 is the long shot out of the 4, but if he has an impressive showing against both Dallas and later on against Buffalo, depending on how these other teams play out, if Baltimore or San Francisco runs the table, I think the MVP is tied to that record. But if they don't run the table and Miami does, it kind of gives Tua a little bit of steam in the race.
Oh, I don't think he's got a shot. I really don't. This is really funny because, and I really do mean this. I'm not saying it out of exaggeration. Every single show I seem to turn on, there was a whole panel that agreed. Colin Cowherd's making the case. A lot of people are making the case. I've checked the comments when the subject comes up, and the only people that seem to like Purdy is for MVP are the people that bet him. You talk to normal fans and media, a lot of media at least, and McCaffrey seems to stick out to him. And if you're not the best player on your team, how can you be the MVP? McCaffrey is the best player on the team. He blocks, he protects, he runs the ball, he catches the ball. He's a power guy. He's a speed guy. No offense to Hill, but Hill's a one-trick pony. Road runner, catch the ball and run. There's a lot of things that McCaffrey does that Hill doesn't do. So I just, for the life of me, you can still get 16-1 on McCaffrey at MGM last time I checked. I just think it's absurd, absolutely absurd.
I believe I was the front runner in liking CMC probably around week 5 or 6. So I'm going to take credit if he gets the MVP, but it is a beauty contest. So you don't really know what's in the minds of the voters. Some of them, I think they have different definitions personally on what the MVP is. So I'm not going to be shocked who wins it, but maybe in the last 3 weeks, somebody shines. I still think the jury is out as to who it is. So it's an interesting race from that standpoint.
Well, somebody listed the quarterback ratings for, I don't know, it seemed like about 10 quarterbacks, and Purdy would be significantly lower than any other MVP quarterback statistically in those rankings.
Yeah.
And
But I don't want to take anything away from what Purdy's
no, he's
accomplished. though.
good.
I mean, he's run the offense through thick and thin. This will be an important game for him, although I do think Baltimore's secondary is vulnerable because of the way they play defense, the way they seem to not protect leads. What was the stat I heard that Baltimore's had the lead in every game at the 2-minute warning or something, or every game in the fourth quarter this year?
Yeah, they've led in the fourth quarter of every game.
Yeah, I mean it's ridiculous. Why aren't they getting stronger in the fourth quarter instead of weaker?
It beats me, but it seems like they just scare the hell out of me every fourth quarter. You can't. You just can't trust Harbaugh to make the right decisions in game.
Yeah. I want to make one point about turnovers because it's a game. I don't want to spend a lot of time on Philly and the New York Giants because the Giants aren't worthy of spending a lot of time. But the New York Giants, according to my numbers, have a +7 turnover ratio. And when you see that, and Peyton Manning is not your quarterback, or Tom Brady is not your quarterback, or even Kirk Cousins is not your quarterback, or Drew Brees or whatever, you say that +7 is bogus. So I think there's hidden value in fading teams with high plus turnover ratios. And I've said this with the Steelers, and I've been correct 2 or 3 of the last 4 weeks in terms of Mitch Trubisky and a +10 turnover ratio. They're not synonymous. Even though Pittsburgh was +10, I think that's a fake turnover ratio. And I think the New York Giants being +7 turnovers is a fake turnover ratio for what it's worth. Just putting that out there.
Another award. If you looked at the comeback player of the year pricing,
I have not, because all along I've heard that Damar Hamlin was supposed to be the winner of that. But now I don't know, because he's basically been inactive most of the year.
This is just preposterous. I mean, this guy's, I forget, it was some absurd monster number, unbettable number to win. And here's a guy that has played a handful of downs this season. And one of the downs he played, he was the 12th man on the field when the opposing team kicked the game-ending missed field goal, and they were penalized, and they lost the game because of Hamlin. So for the life of me, I don't know how you could possibly give him that award. I think it's ridiculous. And I'm just throwing my hat in the ring. I don't think Tua qualifies, even though he's kind of up there. Stafford, I don't think he really qualifies as a comeback. I think Flacco just hasn't been that good, and he hasn't played that much. I got to go with Baker. It is a real shot. This guy's got well over 3,000 yards. Low expectations, mediocre team. He's had some great come from behind wins. He hasn't been getting sacked like he used to. He's not throwing dumb picks. He's showing true leadership, true authentic leadership. This is the guy. I don't know how Hamlin can get it.
So are there posted odds? What are the latest on these players?
I bet Baker yesterday at like 14-1 or something like that.
I assume Hamlin's still the first choice. Who's the second choice?
Somebody sent me the list. We don't have them here in Las Vegas. So you had Well, Hamlin's minus 600.
Okay.
The next highest is few people, Stafford and Minshew. You know what? I could sit there and say Minshew's a valid option, and then you have Flacco, Tua at 12 to 1. Oh no, I'm sorry, Tua was 16 to 1. Flacco's 12 to 1. Baker's 16 to 1.
So if I were voting for the award, I, with all apologies to Hamlin, I couldn't give it to him because, I mean, he might get a life achievement award or something like that. But if comeback is about more than just that miraculous, I love everything about the story, but from a football standpoint, I couldn't give it to him. I understand your argument for Baker. For me, it would be, let's see how Baker plays down the stretch, but it would be Baker or Tua for me.
Okay. What else were we going to talk about? Oh, any divisional or playoff type stuff that you're looking in?
I think we're down to the crunch where there's not a lot of margin, not a lot of plus margin that you can get on this. There's probably a couple of places if you have a lot of outs where you can do a little bit of arbitrage on it, but it's not really worth it. It's like 10 cents of arbitrage or 15 cents.
Well, somebody was asking about the Minnesota and
I think we got better than what was posted, the 125, and I think we have value, but we don't have certainty. That's all.
No, we just have a good price. The price on the Vikings, yes, is plus 115. I got plus 125, and the no is minus 135. So basically, we're back where we started.
Yeah, I'd have to look at my ticket to see what I actually got, but I'm uncomfortable with it. But I'm not calling it a win, that's for sure. I think most of the other ones, my Jacksonville ticket to win the division is certainly in limbo. The Lions, which I bet twice, as we discussed, is doing just fine. But in terms of adding anything right now, there's really not much I could see that I would add. If anything, I would take the Colts, depending on what their price was to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the Colts are minus 150.
Yeah. I like their schedule down the stretch.
To win the division is only plus 250. And the Jags are below their preseason total. They're down to minus 130.
Yeah, the Jags win tiebreaker edges because of their divisional record and their record against all three of their opponents there. But the Jags have to right the ship before that comes to fruition. What a game, Jacksonville and Tampa this week.
Well, and so Jacksonville had but the problem is Jacksonville's 3-5 at home, and they have 2 road games, which I think they're undefeated, if I'm not mistaken.
Jacksonville, yeah, maybe one loss.
They might have lost one, and then you have so Jacksonville could certainly lose at Tampa Bay or at Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still possible, one of those two. Meanwhile, the Colts, this is their toughest game. If they get past this game, they have at home in Indianapolis against Las Vegas and Houston. Well, I guess Houston's not easy. I'm just so used to them being a patsy. No, that is a tough one.
But I mean, it's a scramble in that division because no one's playing. Indy's playing maybe the best of the three. Houston's playing the most fundamentally sound, and Jacksonville has the most talent, but is not utilizing it right now. They had that earlier first place schedule, and now it's coming back to haunt them because they didn't take care of business once or twice.
Boy, I'll tell you, Houston's got a tough road. Cleveland, Tennessee, and at Indy. That's the toughest out of the 3 teams by far.
Yeah, we may be looking at an Indy-Houston last game of the season, win and play in. That may be all I have for right now. I don't have. We'll have more thoughts, I'm sure, on Friday.
Dolphins minus 210. Should I take the plus 1,050 and my Ravens no?
Yeah, I mean the Ravens are. If you think they're plus 1,050 now, their odds are they're going to lose this week. You'd probably get plus 1,300 next week. Huh?
Yeah,
No, I don't
you
know.
are
Maybe you. Who knows? Do you need to? I think you're in good shape.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything. I was just curious. And the Falcons are plus 1,200 now. Jesus.
That was my only over bet for the year. Baltimore over their win total. So
I don't know what I had over analysis paralysis on that win total. I just figured I don't know what I was thinking. You know, if I'm betting that much on the division, they're not going to win the division if they didn't exceed their win total. So I don't know what I was thinking.
And think that their win total opened 8.5 minus 150, which I didn't get.
Yeah.
But I did do the 9. So that seemed like a fair number, more than a fair number. There will be a couple of nail biters or losses for me because I have Tampa under and I have the Rams under. Those don't look good, but all the other ones, hopefully all Arizona needs to do is lose one more game. And that's a very important one for me. Carolina's already cashed. Kansas City is, Cincinnati's already cashed. So I just misread Tampa. So you can't win them all.
I was hoping that Arizona would win 2 games somehow.
Well, you never know because they're going to try all the way through, and games are kind of weird this time of year.
I took I had a lot on the under 5.5, and I decided to buy back some of it at over 4.5, like plus 170. So,
that's my biggest position is Arizona under 4.5. Although Carolina came really close at the time we were in Vegas when I saw you in Vegas. To see that 8 posted in Vegas was absolutely amazing to me.
I just can't believe I think Kansas City is an underdog to hit 12 now.
Yeah, and remember their line, we talked about this at the beginning of the year, wait on Kansas City, and I didn't wait for most of my play because when I saw 12 in Vegas, we talked about it and so on. And actually laid a worse price than you told me. I still remember you told me I could get 125 somewhere, and I ended up laying the 140 at 12. So not a good deal on my part, but I can't lose it at least. And then the line went to 12.5. Remember, Kansas City's over under during the season became 12.5 right before their scheduled disadvantage part. And that's exactly what I was hoping for.
Where the hell is it? Okay. Wow. Yeah. So the under 11.5 is juiced and the over is even money. So,
yeah, again, you have a decision that they will have to make week 18. We'll see what happens. We don't know who's going to need the game and who's not going to week 18.
I guess that does it for about that. Trying to think, anything else on your mind?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. We gave out our, I don't know if you did it, but I gave out my live bait. I saw you punching some numbers in, but you didn't share what you were playing. But I did the live bet of Atlanta, Indianapolis over.
I did that also. Yeah, I'm not done betting what I'm betting, so having a problem with it.
Well,
yeah, I forgot about that guy coming back from leukemia.
Yeah.
And Cris out there bet the Colts money line at 125. I don't think that was foolish. I might have been able to. I might have done the same thing. I just think, I just think Indianapolis is a far better team.
I have them rated 2 power points ahead of Atlanta.
That's a lot for you, isn't it?
Right, just how the numbers come out.
Yeah, I don't see any other opportunities here. I just don't know. It is just going to be mighty interesting. You know what? I forgot. What did you say about Baltimore? You're just not playing it, right?
No, I respect Baltimore as a dog, but I like what San Francisco brings to the table strategically in this place, in this particular game, in this venue, and so on. Fascinating game. I'll be curious to see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if Baltimore won, but I would not be surprised in the least if it's. I could see San Francisco winning by 10 or by 3. I think it's all on Lamar Jackson's hands. A fascinating matchup for him.
Is it going to be the 8th Monday night game that go in a row that goes under?
Under or underdog?
Under. The total 7 straight totals have gone under.
Oh, really?
Oh no! Wait, no. I'm sorry. It's 7 straight underdogs have covered.
Right. That's what it is.
Sorry, I mixed it up.
Yeah, no, it's possible. I think, it's nice for them to have such a solid last game of the week, Baltimore, San Francisco. When games like this are played, you've heard me say this in college a lot, and it works. When games are played like this and these teams are on the spotlight, my focus comes to who are they playing next week, because it's letdown city for one of these teams next week. That's what I focus on. Is you got these rivalry games in college or revenge games in the NFL. There's a natural human emotion that you let down the following week.
Well, that's what shocked me about both of these teams winning and covering for fun in that heavy sandwich spot. They were both in the same sandwich spot of coming off of tough games, multiple tough games, with an important game on deck, and they both showed up.
Yeah, but San Francisco allowed a lot of yards to Arizona. Again, it's just that Arizona's not good enough. San Francisco was vulnerable, but Arizona's just not good enough. They tried, but they're not good enough.
So in the 6 years, I think it's been 6 years since Lamar has been in the league, right?
Yeah, same class as Josh Allen.
He's this is the second largest underdog he's been.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
I think it's a fascinating game. You don't have to bet it if you don't think there's an edge, but it's a fascinating game.
He's been a 7-point underdog once against Kansas City. I don't think he won. That's about all I got. This I played this stupid Marshall tonight. What an idiot! I don't think a human being can miss the line move as often as I did on this one. It just talking about inept.
Yeah,
it's down to 7.
I'm getting fed up with these opt-outs at the last minute. You never know who's playing, or it affects games, it affects props, it affects, and I'm steadfastly against those people. And I know some reputable people said, "Oh, just study the game more, do your homework, do this and that and whatever." That's not the way it's supposed to go. You want to see both teams' best efforts and best players on the table. You don't want to see somebody from Old Dominion.
You had to go there, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you have a situation where the Western Kentucky quarterback the second stringer was charted bad, and then they bring in the third stringer, who, by the way, had opted out and was in the transfer portal. They ended up playing him, and then he hits 80% in the game and makes it look easy against a really bad Old Dominion team that was just lucky that the starting quarterback wasn't playing for the other team. It's just crazy. It's bad handicapping, and it's bad looks for these games.
Yeah, it is. It is. You have any opinion on Syracuse, South Florida?
I did until Schrader was out. Now I don't. I mean, I really like Syracuse in that game prior to that announcement.
Well, it's up to 3 now.
Yeah, I mean, that line hasn't changed, and it's possible that Syracuse is going to do a lot of running in that game, and it won't change anything. But it does change the fact that I don't have somebody I could trust at quarterback. So I'll be looking at other methods of playing the game, and it's exhausting to do what I had to do in the Old Dominion game to show a profit. I don't want to babysit live lines in the middle of a game, a college bowl game. I want to get the play in and forget about it, and I can't do that.
That's actually something. It's funny you bring that up. I've actually added to my routine because I've been setting myself up with these really phenomenal primetime positions with, large middles potential, and I'd be, so I've been actually in-game betting to kind of protect my positions.
Yeah.
For example, I thought this was nuts. What would you make? I mean, we know that let's see here. Let me find one here. Well, we don't have one, but Denver, which is a 6.5 point favorite, the underdog is getting at the highest plus 230. So, what should be the money line on Seattle, trailing by 7 to start the second half? What makes sense to you?
So half the game is gone. So they're trailing by 7. I think they got the ball first in the second half.
They got the
so
ball
you have
first.
to factor that in. So, and you got Drew Lock in, so you're going to get some bonus for that. I would say the money line would be much higher than the 230.
Spit it out.
330.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the proper range would be right around there. It was plus 400. And they get the ball, and I just said, that's just asinine. So, things like that help out, with the in-game observation. But I've just been trying to protect my positions in-game. And, some of the things I know what you can do is you don't always necessarily look at the spread because the total actually could be potentially a better line for you. It could be the exact same situation. If you can't have team B score, compare the total, or if the only way you can lose is if a certain amount of points are scored, those lines are going to usually be different. And then the other thing that I've noticed, the last handful of primetime games, these halftime lines, if you do your shopping, you have either team favored. You can have significant money line differences. In the Pittsburgh Indianapolis game, boy, I forget I think it was at halftime. I forget what the price was, but it was absurd. They were like, I don't know. Let's just say it was plus 250. I'm sure I'm wrong, but they had actually would have been lower than that. They had like a plus 250 or plus 275, and they were down 1 point at the half. And I thought that was pretty darn, and then I looked around at these other places and they were like 175. And this was William Hill Caesars. And so I'm like actually scared to bet it. I go, I'm just going to waste my time. They're not going to take this. So I bet it once and they didn't move it. I'm like, and I'm looking at these other lines and they're not even close. I could actually scalp it. It was so far off. And I'm like, geez, I've already bet it once. And I went ahead and bet it again. And, it didn't pay off, but it's an example of you want a line service or you want to have your shops open to quickly compare because the differences are significant.
Yeah, I just don't want to do it in bowl games, but I'm forced to do it because I have to see what's going on. Because with the portal entries, you've got a game coming up, Notre Dame against Oregon State, where there's going to be roughly 30 players that are not playing by choice. I mean, it's a joke. Both teams have double-digit players not playing by choice, and we just had another one added for Notre Dame today. So it's a joke. You have to massage it. You have to see how the players are playing at the beginning of the game. And in regards to your halftime, NFL or college, the lines that are slower to move, in my opinion, and I'm not the gossip, I don't know it for a fact, but it seems this way. The spreads adjust quickly, but the money line does not adjust quickly. And I
No,
think that's where you get some value is the money line half times.
yeah, you get some really good prices, and I'm talking about even at solid books. I mean, I was getting uh, I forget what game it was. Um, Minnesota and Cincinnati. I was getting some. The market was 6.5 at one point, and I got a 7.5 because I was playing. I was trying to protect my Minnesota position, and I was getting money line and a full point on the other side of the 7 from Superbook of all places. Sometimes FanDuel has a phenomenal line. Sometimes Caesars has a phenomenal line. There's other casinos, and they're oftentimes it's not based on what they think is going to happen in the game. It's they've got big positions that they don't want
Yeah.
that they want to protect or they want to create.
Yeah. Yeah. They're taking a stand sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, sir. We've
Yeah,
gone.
it's Taco
We held the
Tuesday.
attention span of everybody, but we'll be back on Friday for some more.
Yeah, same bet time. No, we can't even say that anymore because you can't show up on time. You should be in the penalty box.
I just want to keep people guessing.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for joining, guys. I hope there was something of value there.